Any girl with a passion to fly loved the idea of contributing to the war by joining the Canadian Royal Air Force. The need for overseas combat kept increasing, and Canada had to go to what seemed drastic measures. On July 2, 1942, the government announced they would enlist women. Over 17,400 women signed up for the Women's Division Royal Canadian Air Force. The ladies were sent to training camps that fit 6 to a bedroom and 12 to a bathroom. But despite the unfamiliar or non-ladylike living conditions the women were in, they stayed and trained hard. Each girl was there for a purpose, to prove themselves. I told my father I was going to enlist in the WAF division. He said he would not sign the release form because I was underage. I told him I would sign the same for him and go anyway. Although I was 17 years old, my father realized I was determined to join, so he eventually gave his consent and I joined the WAFs in 1943. Cecilia Douglas. Most women wanted to join because they wanted to prove they were superior to men, that any woman could do a man's job, and women were not just made for men. However, men were not so fond of the idea that women were trying to gain this new power by performing this dangerous job of flying military planes. Women felt the general did not want them there and that they were underprivileged. To discourage the women, some men would even play what they thought was a humorous prank by filling tanks of a plane flown by a woman with sugar. This would result in malfunctions while flying, with an outcome of women getting seriously injured. In spite of the men's objections, women continued to train and fly, setting new records in speed and aiming accuracy over any man. This really got men's attention. When they saw how well women were doing in this field and how willing they were to take dangerous risks while flying, it made more men sign up to fly the larger, more treacherous military planes, because they were the ones now trying to prove that they were superior, thus taking the spin the government wanted by enlisting women. When more men signed for combat, women were sent to do jobs such as cooks, drivers, and telephone operators. This also occupying what was before men's jobs, allowing more men to do the risky, heavy lifting jobs on the battlefield.
My name is Cecilia Morgenstern, and I'm going to tell you my story from when I was in the war. I was a young girl, only at the age of 25, when they allowed women to be a part of the military. It was August 13, 1941, that the government authorized the formation of the Canadian Women's Army Corps. I joined right away as a way to show my patriotism and for adventure. I wanted to go overseas so bad. When I found out that the Canadian Women's Army Corps was not formally a part of the Army or subjected to military discipline, I was so disappointed. Women were discriminated against in the military, and people did not take us seriously. They only recruited women who were in excellent health, at least 5 feet tall, around 105 pounds, no dependents, a minimum of grade 8 education, aged 18 to 45, and a British subject, who were paid less than men and with no health benefits. People did not see us as war warriors or heroes. They took women so they could replace men in non-combat duty, freeing soldiers to be at front. But it was a step forward for women in the military. We were fighting our way in. We were enrolled into military-related courses learning Morse code, signaling, and map reading. We were trained as drivers, cooks, clerks, typists, stenographers, telephone operators, messengers, and quartermasters. I was a driver. I drove tanks and would bring men to the hospital. I did my part in the war. I was proud to be a part of helping create the influence of what women could do in the war.
My name is Victoria Foster, formerly known as the Bren Bun Girl. I produce munitions material and Bren Bun light machine guns on an avenue in Toronto. I work for John Inglis Co. in the Second World War. Anywhere that men worked, women could work. Women rapidly took over the posts in almost every capacity. We enjoyed the freedom of working outside of the house for a change. I work in manufacturing plants. Us women replaced the jobs the men had until they went into war. When the men come home from war, we try our best to get them jobs. We all need to share. Right when the men come home, the first thing they worry about is their jobs. Will it still be there, or will it be gone? Will I have enough money? They worry a lot. If women wanted jobs at factories, they couldn't bring their children. So what do we do with them? Daycares and childcares were created so that women could work. Children were sent there to be taught and looked after by other women, who were trained to take care of children as their profession.
Canadian nurses were a critical part of the war effort in World War II. 4,480 nurses served in total in one of the three branches. 3,656 women served in the Royal Canadian Army Medical Corps, 81 served with the Royal Canadian Air Force Medical Branch, and 343 served with the Royal Canadian Naval Medical Services. Within these three branches, there were physiotherapists, occupational therapists, dietitians, and home sisters. The women were called nursing sisters because many of the first nurses belonged to religious organizations. Another nickname for the nurses was bluebirds because of their blue dresses and white veils. For the wounded soldiers, a glimpse of these dresses was a symbol of safety, hope, and relief. The nurses had a fair amount of authority in the war as they were all commissioned officers. The nursing sisters weren't fighting, but they were exposed to just as much horror and danger. 46 nursing sisters died in World War II from working on the battlefield surrounded by exploding shells and gunfire, getting their ships sunk while crossing the ocean to Europe, and from the many diseases they were exposed to. There were 3 requirements to become a nurse. 1, you had to be between 21 and 36 years old. 2, you had to be a nursing school graduate. And 3, you had to be a single woman or a widow without children. Nurses were important to the war effort because they saved thousands of soldiers' lives in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and at home as well. They provided a sense of comfort and hope for the suffering soldiers they treated. Without the Canadian women serving as nurses in World War II, the outcome of the war would have been much different.
The Women's Royal Canadian Naval Service was officially created in July 1942. It was decided that women should be recruited for naval service because the war in the Atlantic was intensifying and the Allies were suffering. The Germans were sinking an Allied ship every 4 hours, and the Canadian Navy required more manpower. So women between ages 18 to 45 were called upon to join. At first, it was a worry that because the Navy was last to recruit women, everyone talented would have already joined the Army or Air Force. However, recruitment officers were surprised by the volume of enthusiastic and talented women that were eager to join. Most women wanted to join in order to contribute to the war effort. Others were bored with life at home and wanted change, adventure, and excitement. 39 branches of employment were offered to the Wrens, including clerical jobs, jobs of maintenance, and even operations. Women did not serve on warships at sea, but they filled in spots on shore so that more men were freed to fight. By the end of World War II, over 6,000 women had served in the Navy. Despite these fantastic opportunities, women in the Navy were still discriminated against. They only received 1/3 of the pay of men, as it was perceived that it took 3 women to do the job of 1 man, and many men considered the Wrens to be a joke. However, the Wrens persevered and had a great time serving in the Navy. They made incredible friendships and were disappointed when the war ended and their service was no longer required. They also made an important contribution to the war effort, improving the Navy morale and efficiency. Their jobs were not spectacular or glamorous, but they were essential in determining the outcome of the war. The women of Canada played a significant role in World War II. They changed the way the world looked at women and the way they were treated. By the end of the war, women were now seen with respect and with some equality. People were now starting to recognize that women are not made for men, that they too are hardworking citizens that can perform any job done by a man. World War II brought independence to women and played a crucial part in helping women break free from discrimination and inequality.